Okay, so here's something we all kind of feel, right? The world is changing fast, like really fast, so fast that it begs a huge question. How in the world do we get students ready for a future that we can't even begin to predict? That's the challenge we're diving into today. All right, let's just jump right in and look at this. It's kind of like a tale of two different worlds, separated by just a couple of decades. On one side, you've got jobs that were totally normal that have just, poof, vanished. Think about 1 hour photo developing. On the other side, jobs that literally didn't even exist as a concept 20 years ago. App developer, robot programmer. This isn't just a small shift, it's a seismic one, and it really forces us to rethink everything about education. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you look at our education system, is it designed to prepare students for the world on the left side of that last slide? Or is it truly building the kinds of minds needed for the world on the right, and for all the jobs that aren't even on that list yet? So, to even begin to answer that, we've got to figure out what the tomorrow we're preparing them for actually wants. This brings us to something called the 21st century's skills gap. Let's dig in. Okay, check this out. This is some fascinating data from a survey of employers. They were asked a simple question. What do you really look for when you hire someone new? And the answers are, well, they're super revealing. Look at the top of the list. Leadership, teamwork, problem solving, the stuff we often call soft skills. Now, don't get me wrong, technical skills are definitely important, but they're not what's topping the charts here. Now, you might be looking at that list and thinking, okay, leadership, teamwork, makes sense. But why these skills specifically? What's the common thread? Well, it turns out it's not random at all. They're all managed by a very specific part of the brain. You could call it the brain's control panel. And what's wild is that this part of the brain is developing all through our school years. And this control panel is powered by something neuroscientists call executive functions. Think of them like the CEO of your brain, right? The little manager in your head that handles planning, staying focused, and juggling a bunch of different tasks at once. Now, does that list sound familiar? It should. It's almost a perfect match for the skills employers are telling us they want. And if we pop the hood on that control panel, this is what we find. These are the core engines driving success. You got critical thinking, prioritizing, and my personal favorite, cognitive flexibility, which is just a fancy way of saying your brain's ability to adapt on the fly. These are the tools that let us navigate a really complex and unpredictable world. I love this quote from Linda Darling Hammond at Stanford because it just nails it. Nimble thinkers. That's the demand. It's not about being a walking encyclopedia anymore. It's about being mentally agile. And that makes the job of intentionally building up these executive functions in our schools more critical than it has ever been. Okay, so if that's the goal, building these nimble thinkers, how in the world do we actually get there? We need a totally new plan, a new blueprint for what learning even is. We have to move past this idea of just covering the material, just checking boxes. And this new blueprint is really a journey broken down into 4 key stages. You start with knowledge, you gotta have the facts, right? Then you build skills, the actual how-to. Now, a lot of education stops right there, but the most important steps are next. You move to deep understanding of the big picture, the why, and then you get to the final, ultimate goal, transfer. And that final step, transfer, that is the absolute game changer. This is the whole point. Transfer is your ability to take something you learned in one context, say a math classroom, and apply it to solve a totally new, messy problem out in the real world. In an age where you can Google any fact, what you know matters way less than what you can do with what you know. It's the huge difference between knowledge and know-how. And listen, this isn't just some nice idea. It's backed up by some serious research. The National Research Council says it right here. The real product of learning is transferable knowledge. And they give it a name we've already heard, 21st century competencies. This is it. This is the destination. But, just having a great map isn't enough to get someone to actually want to take the journey, right? So how do we get students fired up for this? Well, the secret is all about hacking the brain's built-in reward system. See, our brains are literally hardwired to chase goals. But, and this is a big but, it only works if a few key conditions are met. The goal has to be crystal clear. It needs to feel relevant to me, personally. I need to know what winning looks like. I have to believe it's actually possible for me to get there. And this is the big one, I need to be able to see myself making progress. Which brings us to a huge modern-day challenge, right? Our brains evolved for immediate rewards, but learning is a long game. So how do you possibly keep a student engaged in that long game when their smartphone is sitting right there offering up an instant little dopamine hit with every notification? Well, the answer's kind of cool, actually. We don't fight that system. We use it. We hack it. It turns out that seeing clear, visible proof of your own progress triggers a release of that same feel-good chemical, dopamine. It creates this amazing feedback loop. You see progress, your brain gives you a little reward, which makes you feel good. So you work harder, which creates more progress, and on and on. It's the exact same mechanic that makes video games so incredibly compelling. And here's a super simple but powerful example of what that looks like. Imagine a student is just tracking their free throw shooting. In session 1, they sink 8 baskets. Not bad. By session 5, they're up to 14. By the 10th session, they're hitting 22. This chart isn't just a bunch of numbers. It's visible, undeniable proof that their effort is actually working. That feeling, that is the reward that fuels more practice. All right, so let's zoom out and pull all these threads together. We've seen this massive shift in what the world needs from people. And because of that, what the true goal of education has to be. When you boil it all down, here's the massive shift we're talking about. It's just not enough to know stuff anymore. We're moving from an age of information to an age of application. The real test of learning isn't whether you can recall a fact, it's whether you can take that fact and do something with it. Solve a new problem, build something, navigate a tricky situation. That's the know-how that truly matters. So I want to leave you with a question, a little thought experiment for you to take with you. Think about your own life for a second. What's one thing you know a lot about, but you can't actually do all that well when the situation calls for it? That gap right there, that is the space between knowledge and transfer. And closing that gap is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for the future of learning.